What is your response to conflict? How do you approach those tough conversations when relations sour, feelings get hurt? How do you handle yourself? What emotions and actions do you take or have?
That's a great
Do you ghost or do you engage? Yeah, today we want to be talking about how to resolve conflict within a team dynamic. Something very important skill set to have as a leader. And Jared, you got a quote here to kick us off.
Yeah, this comes from Marshall B. Rosenberg, American psychologist, mediator, author, and teacher, the late Marshall B. Rosenberg. He says, to practice the process of conflict resolution, we must completely abandon the goal of getting people to do what we want.
Ooh.
I think that is a fantastic quote because as you'll see, when we go to unpack this idea of resolving conflict, you're going to see just how much you have to get out of your own head to do it. And when he says, the goal should not be getting people to do what we want, right? We're looking at this through the lens of the goal should be adding value to people, even while we resolve conflict. So I love this quote. Again, to practice the process of conflict resolution, we must completely abandon this goal of getting people to do what we want them to do. It just shouldn't be the end goal.
Yeah, and that ties into resolving the conflict, I think. I mean, you're going to have an objective for your organization, the purpose you're here, product you're creating and selling, or ministry you're trying to reach, touch people's lives, feed the hungry, whatever it is. That's not what we're talking about. This is in terms of building bridges within the relationships to bring a solution. In that context, we have to look and examine our own biases and prejudices and assumptions that we have, unspoken assumptions. There's always an undercurrent of unspoken assumptions we have when it comes to resolving that conflict.
Absolutely. I mean, if you think about it, if you leave conflict unresolved, right, it tears down what's already been built, right? And then it can stop all the progress that you're currently making.
Or at least it sours the environment and it becomes contagious. It spills over to the rest of the team.
It does.
And, you carry your atmosphere with you,
of
thing.
You really do.
Yeah, and if you do, your atmosphere is going to rain on others if it's good, or shine on others if it's sunny, kind of thing.
So let me walk us through these questions one more time that we kind of started this episode with. To really get us thinking. What is your response? So what is, Bill, your response, right, to conflict? What is your natural response to conflict? And then identifying what that is. Is it healthy? Is it helpful? Is it not healthy? Is it not helpful?
And as we study the different personality types, if you've ever taken a personality test, Myers-Briggs or what have you, you come to realize that different personalities have different stress responses. And when they're under, they may attack or they may retreat or what have you. So to learn what yours is going to be key for you to help others navigate the process and maybe even for you to be playing referee to bring solution.
Yeah, and I mean, you come at these questions twofold. Once, because this is just how Bill and I look at leadership. It starts with us, right? So we're the first pupil through which we, that's the lens through which we look at leadership tips and tricks. So what is our natural response to conflict? But it's also, especially as leaders, we need to identify sometimes our team members and know what their natural responses are to conflict. Yeah. And that actually will help us down the road. Actually, we're going to talk about this a little bit when we talk about preventing conflict. But the next question then becomes, how do you approach this conflict? Whether that's a tough conversation. So it's not only your natural response, but now it becomes, okay, so how do I approach this conflict? And sometimes by doing these two things, identifying, your own and then those on the team and your natural response, and then by looking at how you may have to change your approach because of your natural response.
And there's no cookie cutter,
right?
If I get that out of my mouth. Cookie cutter solutions, because we're all kind of different. We have different experiences, backgrounds, personalities, so forth.
Yeah.
So you're going to be having to tailor this a little bit with each member of your team that you go to work with.
Right.
Yeah.
And again, this is emotional and it's physical. And so, that overall question again, when relations sour on the team or things aren't going right, there's conflict, feelings are getting hurt, right? How do we handle this? And how do we control our emotions and our actions? For me, everybody knows, Pastor Jared is a hot-headed Sicilian, right?
He's not that bad.
Not bad, but it is something I've had to work through over the years of, being a person who's like, it's my way or the highway. Sometimes I think I should have been back in the day with the familia, but that being said, you can grow. So even if hey, I kind of suck at this, I really need to work on my own, then do that. We believe that you can do that. But moving on, I think we're going to go through, Bill, you got the phases of team development here?
Yeah, I just want to bring some context to which conflict can take place. Tuckerman's model for team development. And it's really simple. You might have heard this before. Maybe you heard it in school. It's forming, storming, norming, and performing.
Okay, slow that down. Say that again.
Yeah, forming. You're forming
okay.
the team. You're bringing your people together. They're starting to socialize, introduce each other, figure out who's who and what they're doing and what type of personality they have and how well am I going to get with that?
So this may be some of you out. This may be somebody on it. You may be informing.
Okay. You may be forming.
Okay.
Or after forming, then there comes a storming. To one degree or another, you're working out those differences. You're coming to an understanding with each other. Maybe there's a lack of participation. There's some conflict-based differences of feelings and opinions and high emotions, and then there's the norming. You've learned to trust one another. You've learned to speak openly, and come together, and you start to normalize how you work together. Your purpose and goals are well understood. There's more confidence in the team. There's improved commitment. Members are engaged and supportive. Relief, lowered anxiety, developing cohesion within the team. So that's norming. So forming, storming, norming, and then performing. Your motivation's increased, the trust goes up, empathy goes up. Individuals defer to team needs rather than individual needs. I mean, that's a sweet spot for developing a team when you get a group together. Just like, hey, I'm not the best at this. He is. That's what's going to be best for the team. So I'm going to which may bring, reward, recognition towards that person versus you, but that's what's best for the team.
That's best for the team. Yeah.
That's a piece of performing. So in that context, you may be in different stages of your team development, and some of these stages may overlap depending on how each individual is moving through them. You may have someone who's stuck in the storming phase, and most of the team has moved on to the norming. So as you're putting your team together, you got to keep these 4 categories in mind when you work out the conflict. Where are you as a team as a whole? Are you just forming?
And even if you've inherited a team, it may be you may have to put some time and energy into kind of backing up a little bit and identifying, what season is this team in that I just took over? Are they still forming? Are they storming? Are they norming?
Yeah.
Yeah. Where are they? And how do I fit in or help?
Yeah. So forming, storming, norming, and performing. There's another one called adjourning, but we're not going to get into that one today, not for our purposes. But the 4 you want to remember: forming, storming, norming, and then performing. Where are you in that midst as you confront, deal with any conflict going on your team? And hey, you may be the center of that conflict that you may have to address.
For real. Yeah. For real.
So, Jared, you have some tips here for navigating this conflict.
Yeah. So when it comes to actually navigating conflict, I'm going to give you a little bit of a story here, and then I'll give you the first one.
Please.
We got 6 or 7 of these, just some tips and tricks to actually navigating conflict. I may have shared this story before in a previous podcast, I'm not sure, but my wife's family, we have a beach week every year together. So I'm talking my in-laws, me and my wife and our children, my 2 sister-in-law and their spouses and children, and my brother-in-law and his spouse and children. And we literally, people come and go, but for the most of the week, we're kind of crammed into this little beach shack, 1 bathroom beach shack. And I remember when we first started doing this, people would ask, they'd find out we're one big family, and they'd look over at the beach house that we're just like, how are they doing this and like not killing each other? So, but for me, I mean, there's many reasons. I won't get into all of them, but I grew up with my in-laws, similar to your experience. So they're like another set of parents to me. Love them dearly, and I could give you all the reasons why this works, but one of the things we've kind of identified as a family is preventing the conflict before it happens, which is our first point. You talk about navigating conflict, think about how to prevent it. And this isn't like, I'm going to prevent every conflict that you're never going to get there. That's not even the point. But it's knowing people enough and knowing their idiosyncrasies, their personalities in a deeper way than surface level really helps to avoid conflict. And one story, this actually happened, I think it was last year at the beach house, and we've been doing this. I think it's going on 14 years. This might be our 14th year doing this. And I'm on the beach and, sitting there with the family, and my brother-in-law comes down. He had just got there. It was like, the day later or 2 days later, whatever, got out of work and brought his wife and kids. And he's standing next to me. I'm looking, oh, hey, how's it going? And then I realize he has my Yeti mug in his hand. And I'm thinking to myself, that's my Yeti mug. Like, we've been through this 1,000 times as a family. Everybody brings their own Yeti. We're a big Yeti family. Each of us probably has a cupboard in our house for Yetis, mugs and cups. And, we should have taken out stock. We spent way too much money on these Yeti cups. And it really irritated me. And I think he could kind of see that. And I kind of joked about it. But I'm like, and the same thing with beach chairs. Everybody brings their own beach chair. Sometimes I'm the early beach riser, so I'll bring a lot of stuff down to the beach early in the morning. And a couple of us will help bring everything back up. So we just had these little idiosyncrasies. And now the family knows, don't touch Jared's Yeti mug. Like, he's a little next level with it, So we wash them, we put them in. If you know what Yeti mugs, you know that they all look similar. They have similar lids. And so if you get yours confused with someone else, we have each family member has their own color of Yetis. It's literally gotten to that point. But just preventing the conflict before it starts. And there's so many more of those little idiosyncrasies. My father-in-law, for example, we know that if we leave the beach house at any given time and you don't come back with 2 or 3 bags of ice for the coolers,
you're in trouble.
Father-in-law is going to get on you. Like, what is going on? Get the ice. And so it's just really funny how you can avoid getting really irritated by people's idiosyncrasies and personalities just by knowing them and realizing, hey, I have these too. Like, if I really think about myself, I'm the Yeti mug guy. My father-in-law's the ice guy, and it's just that happens. And on a team, when you're together every day. This is 1 week in a house with the whole family. Your team is together, 8-9 hours a day. So you really have to figure out, how you're going to work together. And part of the biggest way to do that is, number one, prevent when you can.
Yeah, so, absolutely.
Second one is stay humble. I'll let Bill take this one. Place the value of people above your opinion. Stay humble.
Yeah, this is all falls under the banner of preventing it, right? So, and one of the number of ways is, I think it was our second episode. We talked about the greatest leadership challenges are leading ourselves, right? And to stay humble. And again, I want to remind you of our definition that we agree with. It's not ours, but we wholeheartedly agree with it. C.S. Lewis says, humility is not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less, as in term often, less frequency. Think of others first before you think of yourself. And part of that is just place the value of people higher than your opinion, right? You have an opinion, but make sure your value of the people on your team is above your opinion, what you think should be done. And another way I'll say this that helps me, I came to a conclusion a while ago, and I think I mentioned this before in the previous episode. I'll never make a mountain out of the molehill of how we do something, but I will make a mountain of why we're doing it, right? Yeah. So it goes into the vision and the purpose of the organization. This is why we exist. I'll defend that tooth and nail.
Right.
But there's going to be many different hows to accomplish that why. And if someone has a better how to do the why, I'm going to give in. I'm going to say, great, let's go with it. I'm not going to fight over that. I may hold to my opinion that I think mine's a little bit better because of X, Y, and Z, but I'm not going to, if the majority is going towards this other direction, okay, no big deal. We'll go that way. Yeah. I will not stand on the why or on the how, but I will stand on the why.
Yeah, that's big. That's really big. So you've got preventing it when you can, conflict that is. You got staying humble, especially placing value above your own people, above your own opinion. The next one is keep short accounts. This is actually another tip and trick on how to prevent conflict, and how to stay humble. Yeah. But it falls so nicely within this idea of actually resolving conflict as well, because short accounts with people, like Bill and I have pretty short accounts. Our elder team at the church, you've talked about short accounts with your job and your place of employment. Yep. It's really important because I know, sometimes when Bill, gives me the rub or comes into a meeting, he's just not present. He's tired or irritated and vice versa. You
mean like last night?
It happens. There's really understanding. Again, you're flowing out of, I know Bill, I know his idiosyncrasies and how he thinks and works. He's humble enough that I can return that. But there's also short accounts. So if he knew that, and you didn't do this the other night, but if he did make a comment or something like that out of frustration and I'm in the room, I know beyond a shadow of a doubt, he's going to eventually the day or two later say, hey, look, I had a bad, sour attitude. I apologize. That's just the spirit of short accounts. Yeah. And if your team members know you do that as a leader, they're going to adopt that. Why? Because more is caught than taught.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if more is caught than taught, you're going to be able to, hey, he keeps really short accounts with us. He admits when he does something wrong. That really is going to work for actually resolving conflict when it does occur, if you've already built that habit.
As leaders, we reproduce who we are, right? In other people. They catch us, right? And to demonstrate that's a big deal, to model it. So more, like you said, more is caught and taught.
Oh, definitely.
So, and there's a flip side of this coin of there's been times where I've heard through the grapevine at work that someone has a beef with me. I did something or said something and
seek him out and punch your face. No.
And we have this in church as well, in our church that both Jared and I are members of. Hey, Bill said this, and I don't think that this is, and oh my gosh. And I go, whoa, wait. They told you I said that, and they told you you're upset with me. Okay. I keep short accounts. I go straight to the source.
Right.
At work, I'm known for keeping short accounts. Hey, Stevie Q, I heard that you have a concern with something I said or my opinion on this topic. Can you tell me what's on? And just be quiet and listen, and just, oh, no, well, that's not what I meant. This is actually what I said, and my hope was for this. He goes, oh, really? I said, yeah.
It's like the game of telephone.
It is, exactly.
It'll get around, and then what you said is not what you said by the time.
Yeah.
But if it was, then obviously you got to make that right too.
So don't wait. I mean, for keeping short accounts, if you hear rumblings of someone has something against you, take some courage.
Yeah.
Go and look them and just kindly and compassionately and say, hey, I heard we have a misunderstanding here I'd like to talk to you about. And I want you to know I got 2 ears. I'm going to listen twice as much as I talk.
Well, that in the spirit of going into this next one is making people feel heard and understood, which we're actually going to unpack here in a few minutes, so I don't want to do that too much right now, but that's huge. I mean, I've watched conflicts happen between marriages, conflicts happen between, a parent and a child, conflicts happen between child to child. And it's simply because there's a lack of communication. There's a communication breakdown.
Yeah.
Bridge got blown up and it's not being repaired because people aren't feeling heard and they're not feeling understood. So if you give people that respect and you're humble enough to actually let people at the table feel heard and understood, that takes time. It's a real pain in the neck sometimes. Yeah. Sometimes you know exactly what they're going to say. You could actually say it for them, but there's no need to do that. Just remain quiet. Let them speak. Let them get it all out. I hear you. Let me just reiterate this a little bit. We talked about that before. Yeah. And then next one is putting others first. That just kind of is a way to wrap all these things up.
Yeah.
Remember that you don't always have to be right or have the best idea. We've talked about that.
Absolutely.
You don't always have to have the golden ticket to the chocolate factory type of thing.
It's about what's best for the team, and not always, my idea is not always the best idea.
And then assume positive intent. Not everybody's out to get you. Not everybody's out to sink the ship.
Right.
So assume that there's positive intent, even if something didn't happen the way it should have happened.
Yeah.
That can be a leadership fail when this didn't work. Well, who's responsible? And then we go to chew some heads off without realizing it's probably positive intent with this. So just, again, I'm going to read these again, then I'll let Bill take us through some more resolving. So navigating conflict. When you talk about navigating conflict, prevent it when you can. Stay humble. Keep short accounts. Make people feel heard and understood. Put others first. Remember that you don't always have to be right or have the best idea. And try to assume positive intent. That's navigating conflict. About resolving it.
Yeah, so we got 4 basic steps for resolving conflict, and these are steps you can follow if you have a conflict with somebody, or if you're the leader, kind of being the referee between two people or two groups of people that are in conflict. And it really, I'll go through these and I'll break these down. Number 1, you tell, I heard this is what you said, number 1. Number 2, this is how I understood it. And number 3, ask, is that what you meant? And number 4, shut up and be quiet. In all seriousness, let them explain and give them plenty of room. If there's a moment of silence, don't be afraid of the silence. Let them think and process, and then make sure they feel heard and understood. One of the key pieces about making people feel heard and understood is everybody has a position. Everybody has a stance on something. This is my stance. But why is that stance? How did it come about? How did they get there? What's the question behind the question? What's the question behind the stance? What's that story? So, in part of making people feel heard and understood is after you remain quiet for a while and then ask questions to clarify. Don't go on to defend yourself. Don't go on to explain yourself. Make sure you're asking them questions about their stance and how they got to that stance and why that stance is important for them, right? What experiences, what event took place that brought them about to that stance or position on any given topic, and just gain clarity. And then, and we've talked about this before, then reiterate back to them, okay, I got you. Let me just make sure I got this correct. What I'm hearing you saying now is dot, 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 dot. Do you feel I am understanding this correctly?
Yeah.
Yes, I got it. Okay, great. Can I share some things from my perspective now? Sure, go ahead. That's what's going to open up the conversation. These steps of just, this is what you said, this is what I understood. Is that what you meant? Ask and then be quiet. And then ask clarifying questions and then confirm, am I understanding you now? Okay, and then ask permission to share from your perspective. That's going to bring the emotions down. That's going to open up clarity. That's going to bring understanding to the motivations behind their position or their stance and why they want things to do, right? So this is just a basic, simple formula for communicating and breaking down this conflict into small steps and that aha moment. It goes back to that Mr. Rogers quote he keeps in his wallet. It's hard not to love someone once you know their story, something to that effect. Yeah, he carried that in his wallet everywhere he went. Yeah. And this is what we're doing. We're slowing down to make sure we understand their story, what brought them into this. Well, where were they before this conflict?
Right.
Why are these viewpoints important to them in this conflict? How did those viewpoints become important to them in this conflict? Very key to making sure they feel heard and understood.
And I would add too, if you're listening to this and you're like, this is what HR is for, like just know, right? That just know this is your team.
Yeah.
Like somebody has entrusted you and I with a group of people to lead them, and this is our responsibility. We don't just say, hey, we got HR for a reason. Go dump your complaints on it. Like, be a leader, not just a manager or a boss. Right, and we talked a little bit about this. I just wanted to throw that in there to give an encouragement. Yeah. This is your team. It's also your chance to build your own character, your chance to build your own toolbox too, of being able to deal with certain things. The other thing I would say is this whole idea of resolving conflict, like these 4 steps of this is what I heard you say, this is how I understood it. Is that what you meant? Then quiet, listen, and then maybe ask again. It so reminds me of like our parents when we were little, when they would say, hey, I know you're a little hot. I know you're a little, count to 10.
Go to your room.
Count to 10, right? Like, or go sit for a second, take a deep breath, go take a walk, 2 laps around the house, right? Or whatever your parents made you do. Go get the mail and come back. And it is so true. Because when you're able to just take a deep breath and say, okay, let's just slow down. And for some of you too, if you're thinking, I don't have time for this. I've got, these guys are supposed to be on these machines all day. Like we're losing money. Perhaps it's time for, and I did construction for enough years to know sometimes you just need to take the guys out for breakfast or take them out for lunch and just have a little powwow. Say, hey, we're going to take a little, an hour and a half lunch instead of an hour. We need to work on something. I'm seeing some rubs going on. This is your chance to get things aired out, and then do that for the sake of your team. for the sake of them as people. And, once everyone feels heard and understood, they tend to work a little harder.
Yeah, slow down, and then you'll speed up. That's counterintuitive, but if you slow down and take time to resolve this forming, don't brush it under the rug. Work in building rapport among you. Storming. You have to go through the process of storming. I joined a project team at work. They were a well-oiled machine. I was the newbie, and I had no idea what was going on.
Right.
And 6 months into this project, I wasn't doing a lot of volunteering to take on different tasks because I had no idea. No one would take the time to explain to me. So I had to build up my frame of reference for what the project was accomplishing, how they worked together as a team, and where I could fit in with my talents and abilities to bring the greatest benefit. Well, here I am over a year and a half later into this project, and I'm a major contributor now because I took time to slow down to gain understanding. Now, I could have done it better. What I should have done is go to that project leader and say, look, I'm struggling. This is why I'm struggling. This is why I'm not stepping up. Can you help bring some clarity to me? Right. So that was my fault, but I also put a little onus back on that leader who was making some comments about my lack of participation to other people rather than me. So it was two-sided for sure, both opportunities. But that's just one picture how that forming, storming, norming, and performing kind of fits into the context of where is this conflict falling and why is it falling here, right? It's one thing if you have some well-seasoned team members who are in the performing stage, been around for a while, new and have a personality conflict. That's going to be a different process to resolve, maybe even a little quicker because of the context, maybe not, depending how deep of a hurt it causes. That's going to be different than if you're just in the forming stage or that initial storming stage where you're getting to know each other. So yeah.
It's funny.
Good stuff.
Yeah, and I think just by way of application, we're going to kind of wrap this episode up. I would give you one thing to do. Going to be harder than, easier said than done. Yeah. But get and be prepared for conflict. Yeah. If you're not going through it now, you will. Yep. If you're just coming out of it, learn what you can from it, from what you've heard today, and there's other great resources out there as well. And get and be prepared for it again, because it does happen and it will happen.
Yeah, and I'll offer two qualitative questions I ask myself when working with people. Number one, what does love require? Now, that sounds kind of touchy-feely, warm, fuzzy, but that's in terms of brotherly love, sisterly love, family love, fellow human being, level of respect. I care about you as a person kind of love. Yeah. And then secondly, I would say, what does wisdom dictate? What's the wisest course in this circumstance? So those two questions, as I ponder and filter those, really bring clarity to how I should go about resolving this conflict. Should I wait? Well, wisdom wouldn't dictate I wait in this case. Well, should I change the environment? Well, wisdom does dictate I should change the environment, not do this publicly, bring it to the side. See how those two can really bring clarity to your thinking. What does love require and what does wisdom dictate? So,
hey, thanks so much for joining us today on the Value Added Podcast. We hope this has been helpful to you. It has been for us. As always, if you've got questions or comments, feel free to drop them. Yep. We'd love to connect with you and let us know how this has been beneficial for you.
Yeah, again, we appreciate you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for taking time to listen. We hope to hear from you soon. Take care.
We'll see you next time.
Bye.